Hello, Suzanne. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to meet with me and answer some questions. So my first question is, what factors led to you contacting Lexia Learners for your son?
I think that I just realized that what the school was doing for him was not working, and I know enough that I know that he needed OG, and so I just started kind of searching for a tutor that would be able to work with him, especially since we had closed school and that wasn't an option anymore. But I also knew that he needed some more intensive, some learning, and I'm not trained in it. Even though I've been an educator forever, I'm not a reading teacher, right? So I needed to go to somebody that knew what they were doing.
Well, and even very often reading teachers in the schools are not trained.
Yeah, they're not.
So awesome. So what were your expectations for him after our initial conversation together?
I understood that it would be, difficult for him and it would take time. And I understand that process. And I anticipated that he would continue to grow forward. And I'm seeing that now. I see him trying to read a little bit more. And I'm happy with that progress, right? So I think that my initial, what I thought would happen is happening, right?
As an assistant principal, how many struggling students do you observe in your school?
Oh, a lot.
And do you feel like the school is able to help them and their needs?
So for some, I could definitely see that having an OG trained person on our staff would be really good. Our school uses foundations, which I think if it's done to fidelity is pretty good. And we do see some progress. It's nice now that when I'm sitting in on IEP meetings or we're having kid talks in some of our meetings, that we are having them look a little bit more at like dyslexia, because quite honestly, I mean, I knew Sam had a trouble reading, but it kind of, with everything else going on with him, it was hard to kind of discern what was actually happening with him. And until I took the dyslexia training at my school that became required in the state of Virginia.
Oh, wow.
And then I was reading it and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's like every single one of these things practically, right? Like, I used to think him not being able to remember family members' names if he doesn't see them often. And like, that's a sign, like that's one of the things. And that I just wouldn't have ever put those two together. I just thought, well, I know he has a short-term memory thing going on. Like his working memory is only at like 4%. So I know that that's harder for him. But I never really I didn't put it all together, and I've been an educator forever. So, but I do see a lot more people now. The teachers are much more aware. They're much more apt to try to go to there.
What makes you want to continue services with us?
Because I don't think it's enough. I think the more he can get, the better, right? Like I'm all about throwing as much as I can possibly on him, and that goes across the board, like social skills, and we added horseback riding therapeutic lessons this weekend. Wow. So he did that, and my husband doesn't always see the benefit. He's like, oh my God, how much is horseback riding going to cost us? And I'm like, but it's not just that. He has like developmental coordination disorder, and this is going to help with his coordination and his balance and all of those types of things, and he likes it. So he doesn't see that he's actually gaining skills in those things.
And in the summer, swimming is a great way to develop those skills as well. So.
He used to take swimming lessons before all of this happened. So
okay.
He wasn't swimming once a week, but I'm not quite sure we're ready for like a swim team. My older kids were on the swim team, and that's a little intense.
I could see that being a little too much for him, but definitely just recreational swimming is fantastic for, working on the coordination with the, like when they're learning the crawl or something like that.
Exactly.
So, do you In your opinion, do you feel that when students are on the spectrum, it often gets overlooked that they might also have dyslexia?
Yeah,
And
I think that
why?
definitely.
What do you think? What do you think? Why do you
I
think
think
people
that,
overlook it?
like, we tend to just say, oh, is that go with there, and that it's attention, or it's this, or it's that, and it's not necessarily, you know, I'm fortunate in that I was able to take him to Kennedy Krieger and have extensive testing done on him, right? So I was able to figure out exactly what's going on with my child. And I mean, people that have insurance, they could do that. Like, I only paid $20.
Not everywhere.
I know, but like around here, at least, I was like, I paid $20 to have him tested. Like, probably $5,000 worth of testing done. And I've had it done now twice, because I take him every 3 years. We do another reeval with him there, just to figure out. And that's where in March she also came back with the developmental coordination, but and the math this time. And she was really good about also explaining to me like where his needs are and how it's going to, like, how he's saved by comprehension right now, right? So because he's so auditory, and he passes state reading tests because he has it read aloud to him. And so he would be one that would be hard. He would be one that would fall through the cracks if he didn't have somebody, because he passed his last reading test, the state test, right? So, but that was because it was read out loud to him, because I insisted on that accommodation.
Before working with Lexia Learners, what was it like to have him read?
It was a real challenge, because I mean, I've tried it all. I put the stickies all over the house. I had, I've done all the little tricks that I knew. And he has such a love for books that, like, we read all the time. So, and it was I always took it as I'm going to expose him to all the literature that kids are reading at his age group at that appropriate time. So he has that background knowledge if anybody's ever talking about that book. And so he at least knows the story. And he's pretty good about, like I said, his auditory and his comprehension is really good. And you can ask him about books we read years ago, and he still remembers more details than I do.
Wow.
But the reading himself was just very frustrating. I found he's very, he really is good about reading the page, if that makes sense. Like, if there's pictures,
Oh, yeah,
like that, he's able to pull it all together. I mean, once we said, oh, here, go read a book. And it was an age appropriate book. And I said, here's a book, go up in your room. I want you to read the book. And I knew he couldn't read all the words in there, but he was able to tell me he got the story. Like, every question we asked, he answered it correctly.
and that's a very common dyslexic characteristic, is they look at the pictures or the title of the book, and they will draw the context from it. Mm-hmm. That's why when they're reading a book that has a house in it, on one page they might read house, and on the next page they might read home, because they're not really reading
all the time.
Yeah. That's a very common characteristic. Mm-hmm. So if I remember correctly, when I first did the initial student intake with him, he was not reading pre-K words. He couldn't really read too many words at all. Mm-hmm. And when I just did the benchmark test with him yesterday, he could read some words, well, not too many words on the 3rd grade level, but he could read the 2nd grade reading level. So he's gone up basically 4 reading levels since April. That's what, about 8 months. 8 months, yeah. He's gone up 4 reading levels.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see a difference. He still does the substitutions of, like, he'll just pick a word that starts with a P or whatever, whatever the letter is, he'll pick a word, but if he can't quite get it. But I definitely have noticed, especially in the last couple of weeks, he's been trying, a lot more. I try to have him bake with me and have him check the recipe and tell me exactly how much. And, like, he's able to do that now a lot better than he was before. That's and even find where it might be in the recipe. Like, what are we supposed to set the oven on? Can you find that where it says that? And And he's been able to do it. So it's been really good. I've actually really seen, and especially lately, I think his confidence is up a little bit better.
I was just about to ask about that because I think his confidence has gone up a lot, so I was going to say, do you see a difference in his personality? Because one of the things I say to families is we change lives because the household gets easier to manage. Do you see that?
I think so, but he's always pretty confident. That's what we don't have a lack of confidence in Sam. And he just tries. I mean, he doesn't ever, I don't think he gets too frustrated. I don't know how he would be in class. I think that this virtual setting has actually been a real benefit for him in some ways because, well, first of all, he's had a personal assistant, either me or my mother, all the time, right? Like to help him with the reading if we need to. They do have, a lot of his things do have the embedded reader, an immersive reader for him so that it'll read it for him. He doesn't always want to use that, but I think he feels better. I actually see him trying to type into the chat now. But unfortunately, most people won't be able to read what he's typing into the chat because he still really sounds out the letters and they're not always right. But he's much more vocal about trying it out and like, I got it, So yeah, I think he is getting more confident in all of that.
That's amazing. What would you recommend? Would you recommend our services to other parents with children who struggle?
Oh, definitely. I've told parents before, sometimes in meetings when in the, designee on an IEP meeting, I obviously I can't suggest that they do it, but I just say, oh, my son has, and this is what we do. I can't say it because then our county might be liable for paying for it if I'm like recommending it like that. But I definitely have told parents that that's how I'm approaching it in a way.
And so that's why teachers don't make recommendations because of possible liability.
Right.
Okay.
Because even like if we say anything, I mean, even if I told you, I really think your child needs to go to a doctor, that parent could come back and say, okay, well then you have to pay for the doctor.
Wow.
So we can say, this might be something that you want to talk to your pediatrician about the next time you go, or something like that. That's kind of how you have to phrase it in those kinds of ways.
Well, thank you for giving me that clarity because I had heard that teachers can lose their jobs for saying the possibility your child might have dyslexia, and it never made sense. But now that makes sense because we are such a sue-happy nation that we really need to protect ourselves from potential lawsuits.
Right. So my workaround is that, like I said, I'll say, oh, my son has. This is what I do.
Well, that's great that you have the ability to do that.
I always say, I'm taking off the administrator hat and I'm putting on the parent hat right now, and this is what I'm doing. And I've told my parents, like I've said to parents, like I've gone to testing and I had a full testing done outside of school because I really wanted to have a clear picture about my son. And it really did give me that. And I've also found that because I have that, and it's from such a good place that nobody can ever argue with me. In fact, the school doesn't even do testing on him anymore because they're like, what you have is so comprehensive that there's no need for us to do this. They've done everything and more than we would have done.
Yeah.
And I believe it more, right? So, so I have suggested to parents that you might want to talk to your pediatrician about that. That's what I did.
Well, and that's amazing that Virginia, you only have to pay your copay because California, it's between $1,500 and $3,500 just to get a psychologist to do the test. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's even as thorough as the testing you've had done.
Well, I mean, it's definitely, there's some places here that the insurance doesn't pay for it. Like my My brother just went to a private place, and I know they paid $3,000. But
He didn't heed your advice.
no, I mean, yes, you do have to wait to get into Kennedy Krieger. You have to wait like 6 to 8 months, and that's just the way it is. But I mean, now that he's in, it's a little bit less time for me to wait for each thing, but it's not like I have to go there that often. And the wait was definitely worth it because of what I got out of it.
Right.
And luckily, because it's affiliated with Johns Hopkins Hospital, my insurance then paid for it.
Well, and then you could use the money that you would have spent on just getting test results on remediating to us.
Right, so, exactly.
That's what I always say to parents, because for the most part, like, you don't need a dyslexia test to determine that it's dyslexia. Like you said, when you saw the list, you could check all those boxes. And that's what I tell parents, like, save your money and use it towards tutoring, because if you can check at least 3 boxes, it's likely dyslexia.
Right. But I think as far as for like in school, it definitely helps that I have a diagnosis from outside of school, that they can't argue with me on things. So.
Yeah, and that varies from state to state as well, whether it would be, whether the school will accept it even.
Right, exactly.
But Virginia sounds like they're becoming a very accepting state of dyslexia as a whole.
No, if you want to, every teacher has to go through the dyslexia training now. They make sure when you are renewing your license and everything that you've had it, but it's definitely, it's mandatory now.
Well, and that's great, because I mean, that's what made the difference for my daughter, because I spent years trying to figure out what was going on with her. And we were in Texas only 1 week. And because her teacher probably had to go through a similar type of program, was able to identify what it was. And then, all the pieces came together for us once someone suggested that. Because we already knew my mother was dyslexic. We just didn't know I was dyslexic. And we didn't know that that's what my daughter was struggling with,
Right.
So, yeah, so that's wonderful that they're requiring everyone to understand what dyslexia is, so families can get the help they need.
Exactly.
Well, let's see, I have one more question. And that is, what is the biggest victory that you have experienced since he started tutoring?
I think just seeing him, I got him, they're over here, like his little books that, I've gotten him a couple of these, they're dyslexia friendly books, because of the way they're printed and all of that. And just seeing him actually, the Simple Words books. Do you know these?
No, I don't.
So, yeah, I found them on a website, and it might be Simple Words. I don't even know. But the word count is lower. The print, the way they printed it is better. It's all just very friendly, and it's a chapter book. So it feels much more like, he's reading like the other kids, right? Even though he's not in school. But just to have him be able to sit and, I know he's not getting every word, but at least sometimes he'll sit and actually read, which is such a big, important part of my life. And like my other kids both read all the time. And I see that he's continuing to have that love for books. And I think that that's what makes my heart the happiest, is that I know he loves books, because we've read, umpteen books, and now his sister is reading to him at night. But
how old's his sister?
She's 22.
Oh, okay.
Both kids are back at home now. So.
Oh, okay.
They'll go in and read the different books too. And I think I just want him to continue. He loves to listen to stories, and I want him to have that love of reading them as well. And I'm seeing a little bit more of that. I don't push it too much, because you had told us in the beginning not to really push the books and all of that right now. So, but if he has to read for an assignment, I got him these little books so that at least he has like a book that he's reading
That's
that
awesome.
might be something that he can do. So I think that's my biggest thing that makes me happiest.
Well, I haven't read any myself yet, but I heard that Henry Winkler has put out some amazing books because he's dyslexic. And so so he wrote a few books. And then Captain Underpants, my kids were saying he was well, I knew he was dyslexic, but my kids were saying he wrote those books when he was in 2nd grade, and his teacher like tore up the books and threw them out and said, don't waste your time doing this. And now, you know, he is reaching so many people with his books. And that was actually the first book that got my son to start reading, was the Captain Underpants series. Mm-hmm. So that's something else to look at for more like fun reading, because obviously, you know, that wouldn't be his school assignment books. But yeah, so that's awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us all about your experiences as an educator and as a mom. And I hope you have a wonderful holiday.
Thank you. Enjoy your time off.
Thank you.
Get some time off.
Yeah, I'm taking a couple days off.
Good.
But yeah, and we'll see you next year.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.